Week 3 in DFS. Let's talk to the pros. Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros. This is the DFS show. It is me, Joey P, Joe Pizzapia, and today we're going to take you through Week 3 in the daily fantasy world. Some incredible games to talk about, some incredible pricing and opportunities on some running backs of some really large note that have really small salaries. And to help me break it all down from Team Rise or Fall, it's the one, the only Detroit Beastie. It's Chris Robin. Chris, what is up, my friend? It is so nice to have you on the show today.
Thank you. Yes, that's me. And if you remember correctly, I wanted to wait until we were broadcasting to bring this up. I would say years ago, I always bugged you and hounded you in a good way. I will order your black book if it's autographed. So I feel like we made a connection there in me bugging you for an autograph. So I'm glad we can finally be on the same broadcast at the same time.
Me too, man. Let me tell you, and I've been watching you, and we talked about this before the show the last couple of years, just grinding and content machine that is Chris Robin. And if you haven't followed him on the Twitter machine, you're doing a huge disservice to yourself. At Detroit Beastie, I'm telling you, great videos, great content, great articles too. He's really producing a ton of work right now. And that's what I was always so impressed was your work ethic, right? And that's why I wanted to have you on the show today, because they're basically saying, yeah, Joe, go ahead, book whoever you want. We had Simpson on a couple of weeks ago. Last week we had Elliot Chris. We got you on this week. So I like, going with some of the established people like Elliot, and then also bringing some newer people on there to maybe the audience hasn't gotten to, hear some of their takes and knowledge. But you are somebody who is so consumed with this DFS space and does such a great job. It's I'm telling you, man, it's just been a pleasure to watch you kind of rise. And at one point, I think you had more Twitter followers than I did. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just a little jealous too at the end of the day. And I just want to know what the secret sauce is.
No, the secret sauce is normally, I think at Burger King, it's ketchup and mayo. That's their secret sauce. No. But to me, it's like, to be serious for a moment, it's all passion, right? I'm sure you have too. On social media and websites, we see folks start out really strong and they maintain at kind of an unmaintainable pace, right? And they fizzle out, they burn out. So we have to do things that only we know, like little tricks and tips. Like I take Sundays off from social media, but it really boils down to it is the passion and the genuine nature in which I write and I broadcast. And I've had a bunch of folks tell me, point out that exact fact. And it's nice to hear it back, because I only know what I know, right? I don't know how other people see me or what other people think of me. So it's always nice when people, pop on and go, hey, Chris, love your content, been reading it for a while, and I really appreciate what you do day in and day out.
Well, we're going to get to all the football in just a second. We're going to take you through the cash game picks that we've got, the GPPs, the values, and of course, we're going to fly around too with every single game like we did last week too. So I want to thank everybody who's so passionate about the show here as well, sharing with me, what they want to hear. And you know what, man? I think we did it last week, and I'm very glad to say it was a massive success there. So let's kick things off here. But before we do, I want to remind everybody about our DFS optimizer over at fantasypros.com/optimizer. It saves you hours of research, lets you tweak lineups as much as you want. It also uses projections that are constantly being updated, and you can import your own custom projections. It supports FanDuel, DraftKings, and Yahoo contests, and it generates up to 150 lineups at a time, or a multi-lineup generator as well. We've got optimized lineups also for GPP contests as well, not just cash games, and it lets you set player exposure limits also, and make sure, once again, to use this tool. You go over to fantasypros.com/optimizer, and while you're up there and you're on the Fantasy Pros site, I want to remind everybody too, we got an amazing thing going on with Yahoo right now, which is fantasypros.com/life. Basically what that is, the winner of a Yahoo Fantasy Pros Baller contest gets a lifetime Fantasy Pros subscription. That's right, for life. FantasyPros.com for life. There's cash prizes too that you can grab there. The second through fifth prize gets a Fantasy Pro subscription, and the top 600 win cash prizes. It's a $10 entry, which also aligns with our fantasypros.com/offers, where this year, if you deposit $10, and if you do that into Yahoo over at fantasypros.com/offers and enter the Yahoo's Fantasy Pros Baller contest, guess what? then you get the 6 free months of our MVP subscription over here at Fantasy Pros and a chance to get the subscription for life, fantasypros.com/life. Now let's get after it here, Chris, and let's start with your favorite cash game running back of the week. Who you feel is a lock, you feel safe about, and you like the return on investment.
Well, it's got to be Austin Eckler in LA. The Chargers go to Kansas City, and as it stands right now, the Kansas City Chiefs are 30th overall against opposing running backs. Austin Eck, as I call him, is only $7,000 on FanDuel, and on DraftKings, he's only $7,200. Now, when you look at this game from like a Vegas standpoint, I've said that for a few months now. Looking at the Vegas lines and over/unders is kind of the foundation or one pieces of the puzzle when I build my lines. And in that game, Joe, the Chargers are, they're getting 7 points in this one, but the over-under is an astounding 55.5 points. So I see a ton of points going around in this one. I know you didn't ask for a final score prediction, but it kind of goes to painting a picture here. I have Kansas City winning 34-31, so you were looking at well over 60 total points, and I think Austin Eckler is a massive cog in that Chargers, scheme.
Yeah, I agree with you there, and that total something I've got my eye on too. Literally just did a piece for television about it too, which is going to be interesting. And I know last week maybe it was slightly disappointing for people who had higher expectations for Eckler, but I think that's a good thing, right, Chris? Because then week over week, there might be a little bit of a suppressed roster percentage then potentially on Eckler, because last week, wasn't the smash I think people might have anticipated.
Yeah, and after week 1, he had no receptions. I don't even think he was targeted. So in seasonal formats, you see people dropping him or trading him. But that projects well for ownership percentages, as you said, in week 3. The first 2 weeks of the NFL season, they're always up and down. You got to ride the wave here. But Austin Eckler, to me, is in a fantastic spot in week 3, Joe.
All right, for me, 2 weeks in a row, I'm going to go with Nick Chubb. I got the touchdown last week, especially on FanDuel at 7,800. It's just a good investment. You look at the matchup he's got this week too against Chicago, especially with Jarvis Landry being out, Odell Beckham maybe being healthy. We don't know. I just think they're going to continue to have to rely on Nick Chubb. I actually think he should have gotten more work in that game. And then it's funny, in the second half, he started to get more, and wouldn't you know it, things started to go better for the Cleveland Browns. So 7,600 on DK, 78. And I know sometimes people still want to go away from Chubb because of the receptions, but right now, you're looking at the top of that board. Derrick Henry had a huge week last week. He was very well priced. We talked about it on last week's show. That might be the last time you see him at that price. He's gone all the way up on FanDuel to 9,700. That becomes difficult in terms of pricing there. But again, when you don't have CMC on the main slate, things are a little bit more wide open at that running back position. So Chubb is the guy that I'm looking at this week. I think it's a safe floor, and I think there's more of a ceiling than we've even seen so far. I think they've been a little slow with Chubb out of the gate just to monitor him in September with that extra game coming at the end of the season. So don't be surprised as we get closer, into October here, that all of a sudden Chubb really starts to take off. Who's your wide receiver this week in cash games that you feel very confident about the investment, Chris?
Oh, this one's easy peasy, and it's Cooper Kupp. The Rams host the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa Bay's 30th overall against opposing wide receivers. On FanDuel, Cooper is $7,900. On DraftKings, he's only $6,800. Now, look, after 2 weeks of the NFL season, Cooper Kupp looks like the favorite of Matthew Stafford. I don't know what Cooper Kupp does as a man, because when Jared Goff was there, he was his favorite. He must be giving these guys fruit baskets or sending them Ugg boots like Brady used to do. I don't know. But Cooper Kupp, to me, is in a fantastic spot week in and week out. Only thing I would caution is does this mean Robert Woods is toast? I don't know what to do there, but for the sake of the question, give me Cooper Kupp to score a touchdown, maybe 2 in that one. Over-under's at 54.5 points. And the line keeps shifting. When it opened, Tampa Bay was getting a point. Now the Rams are getting a point. I don't know how it's going to go, but give me all of the Los Angeles Rams, and especially Cooper Kupp.
Well, last week when we had Elliot Christ on, he told this story about Cooper Kupp, and he was his must-start wide receiver. So it's funny, you went to there too. And he told us a story about Stafford and him get up every morning and have breakfast at 6 a.m. and go over the playbook and stuff like that. Maybe Robert Woods needs to go to that breakfast. That's all I'm saying. Maybe Robert Woods needs to show up, not hit the snooze alarm and get to that breakfast meeting. But just before, while we're on this tip right now, would you think there's any Oppo love this week on Woods, because so much attention's gone to Kupp early on and the matchup is pretty tough? So one would think that, Cooper Kupp is going to be game planned for. Do you think there's any interesting contrarian play here with Woods this week, again, as a side note?
No, it's a great question, great comment. I absolutely do think that, because if you play enough DFS like you and I do, we're always looking for a little edge. And in today's day and age of DFS, with all the tools at our fingertips, we have to, kind of trust our gut, do a little bit of research, and go from there. Because of Cooper Kupp starting so strong in the connection with Matthew Stafford, I think a lot of folks are going to be getting away from Woods. I'm not saying his ownership percentage is going to be in the toilet, but we might have kind of a lower ownership percentage for Woods this week and moving forward. So I think Robert Woods is a great play as well. I think I don't know if I said it, but he's $6,100 on FanDuel, and then on DraftKings he is $5,700. So it's just about the zigging and the zagging. When folks look left, we go right. So why not stack them both, to be honest?
Yeah, I'm into the Cardinals this week. Spoiler alert. Jacksonville's not good. They're just not. And Kyler Murray's all world right now. I think one of the easiest things you could do this week is pair those two guys together. DeAndre Hopkins, 8,500 and 82 on DK, 85 on FanDuel. And then on the opposite end there, we might as well just talk about the quarterback, because I'm going to stick around here. Kyler Murray at 9K. I know it's expensive, 8,300 over on DK, but I think this pairing is very safe. And, we're going to get to some running back values this week that are extraordinary names at extraordinary values that you typically do not see. There's also some really good wide receiver values as well that we're going to get to in that 6K range. And I feel like everybody this week, if you noticed, is like 5,600 on DraftKings. I don't know what it is. 56 was like the magical number I had to keep looking at. I was like, am I seeing this right? Everybody's 5,600. But Chris, that pairing in general, I think is going to be just impossible to stop by Jacksonville this week. I just think they're going to have their will. I can't imagine them not coming away with a touchdown together and maybe two. So I just look at that and say it's a very safe play. It's a very strong play. Yes, you have to pay up for it, but this particular week, there's a lot on the board where you can. So who's your safe quarterback or your cash game quarterback that you feel good at the high price return?
I mean, if people like it or don't like it, it's an odd situation. But give me Jalen Hurts, the Philadelphia Eagles. I know this is a Monday night football game. Philly goes to Dallas. Dallas is 24th overall against opposing quarterbacks. And look, if you want me to kind of go through like a main slate quarterback, it's got to be Lamar Jackson, right? Or excuse me, the Baltimore Ravens go to Detroit. I think the Baltimore Ravens just blow out Detroit, unfortunately for me as a Lions fan. But, Lamar Jackson is going to go absolutely nuts, but in turn, kind of like Kyler Murray, their ownership percentages are going to be through the roof, but that's okay for cash games. It's kind of like a free square. If you and I were going head to head, we have the same quarterback, it's a wash. So it's another level of strategy here. So give me Lamar Jackson in Detroit this weekend. Over under in this one's at 50, and I think Baltimore can put that up alone just on them.
Now, I understand that Travis Kelce is a good play this week. We talked about that 55.5 number in that game. And I'm pretty confident that's going to be somewhere in that vicinity, if not pretty much cracking it. So I'm going to just pay down a little bit, because although Kelce is brilliant, once again, it's tough. He's very expensive in terms of cost. So when you're looking at Kelce, he's 8,500 on FanDuel, 82 on DK. I'll take that $1,000 difference basically, and that's what it is. It's actually $1,100 difference on FanDuel to go to Darren Waller at 74. Look, we're just seeing what the Vegas Raiders are doing, and it's working. And I think Miami's going to struggle to move the football. I don't think it's going to be as, shut out like last week. Brissett's a capable quarterback, but at the same time, I think going on the road to Las Vegas, I think it's going to be a tough building there, it looks like, going forward. And it feels like, to me at least, you know what you're getting. If you want to pay for a premium tight end, Kelce's just a lot to pay for, and I don't know how much difference. I don't think there's $1,000 difference in what you're getting, I guess, in terms of the ROI. And on DK, it's $7,400, same price for him, and $8,200 for Travis Kelce, so it's an $800 savings. So that's where I'm going with tight end. But how about you, Chris? Where would you want to pay up for tight end this week?
Well, again, people are been on this kid all spring and summer. It's Kyle Pitts. The Atlanta Falcons go to your New York Football Giants, I believe, is
not
where your
mine.
fandom lies.
Not mine. Oh, no. How dare you? I am a Patriots fan. No.
There you
go. For many, many decades, before Brady, before Belichick, I go to the Parcells era. So
well, you know what they say about assuming makes an ass of you.
No.
So here
that's okay. I'm in Jersey. Most people would assume that. Normally you would think, but I'm also a loser Mets fan my whole life. So I found balance, Chris. I found balance in my fandom where one team makes me feel really great, and then I'm miserable for the entire spring and summer. But fall and winter are usually a good season, so
you can count on it coming back around.
I
for
can.
You. I'm the same way.
But I experienced the Pete Carroll years before Bell. I've been through it all, so this has been a fun ride, and maybe we're rebuilding. But go ahead, give me your tight end that you think is worthy this year.
Sure. So Kyle Pitts and the Atlanta Falcons go to your not favorite New York football Giants here. The Giants are 28th overall in defending a tight end. On FanDuel, Pitts is $6,200. On DraftKings, he's only $4,900. Now, look, if you look at the first 2 games of the season, 14 targets, only 9 receptions, over 100 yards. But the most important thing is he's averaging well over 10 yards a catch here. Kid is yet to score his first professional touchdown, and I think that streak will be over. I think after week 3, the Kyle Pitts fans and the Kyle Pitt, apologists and everybody will be back on Pitts, and that's no issue here because, again, I think he goes for, I have my projections up right here too, I think he gets another 7-8 targets, catches 4 or 5 passes, puts up a modest 50-60 yards, but I do honestly think he finds the end zone once for sure. I think we can set that in stone, and we all know projecting touchdowns is very, very volatile. You can look foolish if you go out on a limb here, but who's to say Pitts doesn't find the end zone twice against the Giants' 28th ranked defense, as I said, against tight ends.
And the Giants historically also have struggled mightily against the tight end. So I don't see that changing necessarily this year because it seems like pretty much the same personnel. So what are we going to do about that? Let's take a quick break from the action to tell you guys about Pristine Auction. That is the place to go for all the cool swag this football season. Helmets, footballs, jerseys, you like baseballs, you like bats, you like artwork, you like cool stuff that you want to bid on, Pristine Auction is the place to go. Head over to pristineauction.com. Again, that's PRISTINE auction.com. And when you use that promo code FantasyPros, you get a $5 credit on us just to sign up. It's free to sign up. And there's $5 in your account just on us, and start bidding on all these amazing items they have. We're giving away a Kyler Murray football that's autographed. Guess what? That's where we got it, Pristine Auction. So go to pristineauction.com, get your bidding on, and get some cool stuff that you can put around your house this upcoming football season. And now, back to the show. Let's move on here and talk about some of the value plays, the guys that, have a little bit more value, but we feel really good about what they're going to do. And I'm going to start with you on this one here. Give me the running back that kind of suits that for you, that you feel is a good investment. Maybe you can play him in cash. Maybe you can play him in GPP also because of the price.
Yeah, to me, it's Chase Edmonds, as we said. You said you're all over Arizona, so let's kind of build on that. Chase Edmonds is a fantastic play. He's gotten 20 carries so far in 2 weeks. I think we see another double-digit, workload for him this week. A couple of receptions in there as well. So if you look at what Edmonds can do here, right? You kind of you throw that off to the side because Kyler Murray, as I hate this term, but the Konami code, but it is. This kid's on a whole nother level. Arizona goes to Jacksonville. Jacksonville's 24th overall against defending other running backs here. And Chase he's only $6,600 on FanDuel, and then on DraftKings, if you bear with me here, Chase Edmonds is $5,700. So I love the matchup, and personally speaking, I believe that Urban Meyer is in over his head. He looks awful. He's just being outcoached in any way possible. He's making, what should be one of the studliest rookie quarterbacks of all time. It's not going well. He's not using James Robinson right. So just going to be bad news for Jacksonville. And I think Chase Edmonds gets a ton of work in the second half here after Kyler Murray and Hopkins do their thing.
I'm going to go with Saquon here. And I know it's scary, everybody, but $6K on FanDuel, $5,800 on DraftKings. If it's not against the Falcons, it might not be all year, boys and girls. And I just want everybody to kind of understand that I get the risk that's here, but at the same time, this allows you to go up, to that higher board of, say, DeAndre Hopkins. You could get DeAndre Hopkins, Kyler Murray, and Saquon Barkley quite easily into a lineup. Like, it is not a tough road to go down. It's just not. So how can you say no to the talent in that matchup? And I know I'm going to be harping on Giants, and I know it's chalky, but sometimes the chalk is right. And I also think, just like Chris too, the Atlanta side of this game can make money too. So if you make lineups that have the Giants in it and then turn around and either game stack it with both sides or just pivot off of the Giants in a whole other lineup and play the Falcons side of this ball, I think that could be very beneficial with Ryan, with Ridley, with Pitts, as Chris alluded to. But Barkley's that guy for me. Are you concerned that this is a trap with Barkley here at this price, or are you just smashing this one, Chris?
No, I'm smashing this one. He headlined bottom of the barrel. Actually, the entire New York Giants roster headlined bottom of the barrel this week. You stole it right out from under me. But as a semi-pro DFS writer and broadcaster, I'm able to kind of shook and jive on the move here. As you said, Barkley's $6,000 on FanDuel, only $6,500 on DraftKings, and that's a smash to me. I don't think we see Barkley this cheap ever again. He's never been this cheap before. Maybe the first few weeks of his rookie season, but this week a lot of folks are going to be off Barkley. So this is a perfect chance for us to pounce on this and get heavy doses of Saquon Barkley. And I think he returns the value. I think you said you're playing Atlanta, they're 22nd overall against opposing running backs. And I saw a graphic earlier that said, look at what he did in week 1 in terms of workload. Look what happened in week 2. So it's steadily growing here. I know in week 2, he had that 140+ yard carry, and that was just about it. I think he finished with 60 something yards. So all of it came on one carry. I think Saquon Barkley reassures us all that he is a stud RB1 in week 3.
And my apologies. I think I said 58.65 is the correct salary on DK for Saquon. I was reading off the wrong thing there for a second there. Let's continue on here. Let's get your wide receiver. I know you love the Eagles this week. You made that abundantly clear. So if you're playing any wraparounds or you're playing Monday night as a standalone, you really like the value of Smith and Goddard and Jalen Hurts, which makes a ton of sense to me too, because after coming off last week where they didn't look good, but the week before looked great, go back to it and see if, you get the first week more looking like, and in division games, teams tend to get up for a little bit. But is there a main slate wide receiver, in your opinion, Chris, that you feel has a good value, that you like where you're at, and maybe you can, flip back and forth between cash and tournaments with?
Absolutely. It's Michael Pittman, the Indianapolis Colts wide receiver. Indy goes to Tennessee, and both these games there's a lot on the line here. I know it's only week 3, but as I said, Indy goes to Tennessee. Tennessee is 32nd overall against wide receivers, Joe. Mm-hmm. And last I looked, there's only 32 teams in the league, so Tennessee is dead last year. And, it's the ebbs and flows is the theme here, as I said, 10, 15 minutes ago here. On FanDuel, Michael Pittman Jr. is only $5,600. On DraftKings, he's $5,500. And after week 1, a lot of folks got away from him. He didn't see much work. Zach Pascal is actually scored, I believe, 3 touchdowns in the first 2 weeks of the season here. But we saw them kind of go to Michael Pittman a little bit more in week 2. I believe he had over 100 yards. And I'm doubling down on him to go over 100 and a touchdown this week. As I said, $5,600 on FanDuel, $5,500 on DraftKings. In a game, both teams need to win, as I said. So, yeah, I love Michael Pittman Jr. with or without Wentz. He's got 2 limp ankles. I don't know if he's playing or not, but even if it is Jacob Eason, I'm still all over Pittman Jr.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. If it is Eason, which it seems like it very well might be, does it change your tune? But you think that even becomes more of an interesting GPP play then?
Correct, and I would not hesitate to even put Jacob Eason as my quarterback too. He's $6,500 on FanDuel, only $4,000 on DraftKings, and Tennessee is once again dead last in defending quarterbacks. So at those prices, you don't need to hit 4 or 5 times the value. Just double it down. Give me Eason, give me Pittman in some sort of weird little mini GPP stack.
All right, I kind of cheated here, I'm not going to lie, because I couldn't decide which wide receiver I liked more. So I cheated a little bit, and, look, there's a lot of value here. Kenny Golladay, 5,600 on both sites. As I said, the 56 is that magical number there. And, look, Sterling Shepard you can go with as well. I think both of those guys, look, after watching Kenny Golladay yell and scream last week, this is the matchup for Kenny Golladay. Like, this would be a good matchup to get involved there. The stock is low. You could buy in for 1 week against Atlanta. And if you want to play it a little safer than Sterling Shepard, especially on DK and the full PPR, I mean, the guy's just been a target monster. And if they get away from it now, that'd be shocking. And it's not out of the realm of possibility to like Saquon and one of these wide receivers too, because it seems like defense is just going to be put aside in this game. That tends to be where things are going. I mean, this Giants defense, made Taylor Heineke look like, an all-world quarterback last week. So Matt Ryan is certainly going to throw the football enough that there's going to be a lot of challenging points going back and forth. So for me, either one of these wide receivers, maybe you lean Galladay a little bit on FanDuel, lean Shepard a little bit more on DK, and kind of spread it around that way. And my quarterback, look, if I like the Giants, I got to be with Daniel Jones and be consistent. And I know I'm talking about the same team, but geez, man, like the value's just there, especially with the rushing yards. The floor is there, the ceiling's there, the cost is there. It's just crazy, Chris. It just feels like a really just easy thing. And look, I'm not saying I'm doing it across the board, but I'm saying I'm going to be involved with it. If you want to go, we'll talk about some other quarterbacks coming up in a second here, but it's 7,400 on FanDuel, 5,800 on DK. It's just a good return on investment, I think, for Daniel Jones this week. Who's your quarterback that you like this week?
Matthew flipping Stafford for the Los Angeles Rams. So as we said, the Rams host Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa's 27th overall in opposing quarterbacks. Now look, everyone's going to say Tampa Bay's awesome. Their defense is good. Well, they're starting slow, and rightfully so. Most teams are doing that. Stafford is $7,600 on FanDuel, $6,400 on DraftKings. And if you look at what Stafford's done so far, he's kind of come to the light on a national stage. He got a little smattering of that stuff when he was in Detroit, when they played a primetime game, when the NFL or the world was forced to shine the light on Stafford on Thanksgiving or Monday night. Now everybody's coming around. Stafford's fantastic. He's 1 yard shy of 600 total passing yards through 2 games. So looking forward to week 3, I have him for a very nice workload, 300 yards plus. I think you can pencil him in for 2 touchdowns, maybe even more. So the fact that Stafford is playing Tampa Bay it's unbelievable, because a lot of folks will be fading Stafford because of the matchup, right? And I feel like the first few weeks of the season, everybody's holding on to what we saw last season, but that was then and this is now. So Stafford looks amazing in Los Angeles, and I have no qualms going with Stafford this weekend playing Tampa Bay.
Yeah, well, look, you saw Dak Prescott put up 400 a week 1 on them, so why can't you throw the ball on Tampa? You can. Tampa's a good defense, but it doesn't mean you can't throw the ball on them. The secondary is actually the one spot where I think it's a little questionable. How about tight end? Who's your value tight end this week, Chris?
Well, this one is, again, I'm going to stick with, I said, what was it, the Monday Night Football game, so I'll get away from that. We'll get a main slate guy.
Well, while you're looking for your other tight end, I'll just throw out there, in that same game with you, it's Gronk again. It's Gronk again. The touchdown equity's through the roof. He doesn't have to get 2 every game. If he just gets 1, I'm happy. And that return on investment still seems pretty good to me. Like, I just look at that tight end right now in that position, and there's the very top of the board, or you can go down to 6,500 on FanDuel, 55 on DK, and get Gronk. Hawkinson's in that same kind of vein too, but I just wonder if Gronk has just slightly more touchdown equity. Hawkinson probably gets more targets. We all know that. I don't think you can go wrong between either of those two guys.
Well, I'll keep it in the same game then. It's got to be Tyler Higbee. And if you look at Higbee, Higbee is $5,500 on FanDuel. And then on DraftKings, he is $4,000 even. Tampa Bay's 23rd overall against opposing tight ends. And again, another guy in that mid-tier value that people just glance right over. They scroll through with their thumb on these DFS platforms, and they pay no mind to him here. But in this game, there's going to be points to go around here. I have the final, if it matters, Joe, at about 34-27. So you're looking at almost 60 points total here. And I think Higbee finds the end zone again in week 3.
All right, let's move on to the GPP guys. Some of the guys probably lesser prices, lesser rostership, but might have good days. And I'll start with the running backs here. I think Kenyon Drake against Miami is an interesting play. It seems like, once again, Josh Jacobs didn't practice yesterday. We're kind of, getting to that point where it's tenuous for him to play. But even so, a lot of targets are going Drake's way. And I think that whenever you get a guy who's, kind of got something to prove against an old team, those guys tend to want to stick it to them. I mean, it's just kind of what it is. And he's in a position to do that right now because Miami's kind of limping into this game. I think more on DK, it becomes an interesting play, personally, because of the price he is there. But the other guy we'll throw out there is Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt, Magic 5,600 on both sides. Kenyon Drake 57 on FanDuel, 55 over on DK. So you can kind of interchange these guys. I think they're interesting as a flex play, potentially. Both, I think, will work in the pass game. We know that. Both have a little bit more touchdown equity than I think on normal weeks because of what's going on with the Browns right now and that wide receiver core being banged up. And with Kenyon Drake, I think right now he's kind of getting more familiar with the playbook, getting more familiar with the team. And right now, I mean, Derek Carr is playing great. So when it comes to a running back that's, looking good for GPP for you, which way would you go?
I'm going to stick with what I know here in Detroit, and that's Jamal Williams. As I said, Detroit hosts Baltimore. Baltimore's 20th overall against opposing running backs. J. Will, as most people call him, I think, $5,600 on FanDuel, and then on DraftKings he is $5,100. Now, in a game script that's going to look pretty negative from a Detroit Lions perspective, I've been able to spin that to my advantage as a Lions fan all these years. It's negative on paper, but in a game, the Lions are going to be trailing early and often, probably after the first 2 drives of the game, they're going to be down 14 points. So let's get in Jamal Williams with a ton of passing down work. Now, I know, the question is there, well, doesn't DeAndre Swift take a little bit from him? Well, yes and no, but look what happened in week 1. They both finished as top 10 running backs in DFS and even seasonal fantasy format. So I think Jamal Williams is a great value this weekend. And as I said, he's $5,600 on FanDuel, and he's only $5,100 on DraftKings. And again, more so on DraftKings. He's a little cheaper, obviously, but I believe DK is you get a full point per reception. So you can pencil in Jamal for, what, Joe, 5-6 receptions, maybe even higher than that as they're just playing from behind all game.
Yeah, I definitely love that. Rondale Moore for me in wide receiver. Again, I want the exposure to that game. And what's tricky about Moore is he doesn't play as many snaps as some of the other guys on that team at wide receiver. However, he's getting quality looks when he's out there, and he's making big plays, and Jacksonville is not good. So if you want to, let's say, get Kyler Murray, but you don't want to go with Hopkins because it's too chalky for you, or you want to take Murray and then play him somewhere else, I think Rondale Moore is the perfect guy. Some people will try to go back to Kirk or Green. I'd rather go to Rondale Moore, especially over on DraftKings, where the floor, I think, is a little safer. I still think his floor is somewhere in double digits at least, so I don't think it'll crush you if he doesn't have a great game. But his style of getting open after a play breaks down is so obvious, and Kyler Murray's so good at doing that because when the pocket collapses and he rolls out, Rondale Moore is somehow always open. It seems like these first couple weeks.
It's a fantastic play.
It is. It's fantastic to see, and the fact that you're seeing it so early in the season is very encouraging that it could only get better. How about for you when it comes to wide receivers? I know you mentioned Pittman already. Is there another wide receiver out there for you that fits this bill of maybe, a GPP guy that could go off?
Absolutely, and that is we're going to stick with Vegas here. Henry Ruggs III. They play Miami on FanDuel. Henry Ruggs III. Don't want to disrespect him and his name. FanDuel, another $5,600 wide receiver, and then on DraftKings he's $5,200. Now look, people were all over this guy in a negative light last season, and I think now, fast forward to the build up to week 3, I'm almost positive that the breakout for Ruggs is upon us here. We've started to see Vegas. They have some sort of magic going on in there. 2-0, they won on Monday night, and Henry Ruggs is getting more involved in this offense. I think they finally, captured something with this kid that they know works best for him. Is he like a just go down the field, throw the ball up and catch it? Yes and no, but it's nice to see them move him around all over the field. And I'm almost positive that we see them manufacture more plays for Henry Ruggs moving forward. So let's get ahead of the game and get in on Ruggs now. As I said, $5,600 on FanDuel, $5,200 on DraftKings. And I have this dream, or maybe it was a premonition here, Joe, where he catches some sort of bubble screen or something behind the line of scrimmage, and boom, he's gone off to the races, to the house, 50, 60 yards.
Yeah, that would not surprise me at all. All right, on to the quarterbacks here. Justin Fields does have a tough matchup against Cleveland, but Justin Fields, I think, is up for the challenge. And I think Justin Fields is going to open up a lot of eyes this week when he had more time to practice with the ones and work on things. And I don't think they're going to win this football game. But I do think from a fantasy perspective, when you look at the price of Fields, and I know a lot of people will have the wait-and-see mentality, I'm not like that. I get in when the getting's good because the more tape there is on a kid, the more easier it is, I should say, to stop him. 6,500 on FanDuel, 5,200 on DK. I think it's worth a shot in a couple lineups because I think the rushing equity is there enough to give him a base of points, kind of like that Jalen Hurts mentality, but even cheaper. How about for you when it comes to a quarterback you like this week in tournament?
It's the young kid, Justin Herbert. As we said earlier, the Chargers go to Kansas City. Now, here's the thing. Kansas City's 6th overall against opposing quarterbacks. So I think that is going to scare off a couple folks, but Herbert's only $7,500 on FanDuel, $6,500 on DraftKings. And to me, this is one of the premier games of the week. As I said, the Chargers go to Kansas City. Chargers are getting 7 points. So we already know that they're the underdogs. And look, Kansas City is a machine at home. In Arrowhead, they're unbelievably good, but I have a ton of points going around in this one. And look, as you said moments ago, I don't expect the Chargers to win here, but I think they keep it close. I have the final in this one, 34-31-ish, something along those lines. So Herbert will be able to keep pace with Patrick Mahomes and Kansas City in Arrowhead. So I think there's a ton of room for him to go nuts in terms of passing attempts. I believe Herbert has 88 total passing attempts so far this season. I think we see another 40 plus passing attempts for Herbert this week. And at those prices, it's a no-brainer. And also because of the ownership percentages. Joe, even last week, I believe he was like 7-8% owned on FanDuel and DraftKings across the board. And again, people are going to fade him again in week 3 because of the matchup. But why can't we spin the matchup to our advantage? If people are looking left, we look right. It's the old Kansas City shuffle. No pun intended.
Well, yeah, well-placed pun, number one. And number two, I agree with you. I think these are exactly the kind of plays where, people get sour too quickly on certain things. And I have concerns about Herbert living up to last year's standard, but you make a great point here. This is an absolute opportunity because the roster percentage lows, because the price is right, and because the total tells you, Las Vegas is telling you with the total, there's points to be had in this game. And, maybe the Dallas defense is a little bit better than we give them credit for. Because I think with Micah Parsons and Van Der Esch healthy, that is a very different linebacking core than what you saw at the beginning of last year. So that goes a long way. The last one here is the tight end. And I know it's going to sound funny because he's kind of moderately priced, like I just talked about. But it's TJ Hawkinson, and here's why. People will see Baltimore and go, I don't want to play him against Baltimore. But why? Why don't you want to play him against Baltimore? Baltimore's given up 60 points to start the year. This defense, clearly you can move the football on them right now until they figure things out. So as far as I'm concerned, right now, TJ Hawkinson is in play, and I think people will automatically dismiss him because they will see Baltimore. They will think, this is going to be terrible, all this stuff. But as you mentioned before, that game script, I think, will certainly lead towards them having to throw the football more. And I think not only Jamal Williams benefits there, but Hawkinson clearly too, because he is the best option they have in the pass game. But when it comes to tight end, you got somebody a little cheaper than mine, which is not cheating, but I'm trying to say mentally, it's just a different approach in looking at it. And I think the roster percentage will be very low on Hawkinson this week.
I agree, and I'm fully projecting double-digit targets yet again for TJ.
Oh, 100%.
So very much in play. Let's be honest here.
Yeah, 100%. So who's your tight end that's cheap that you like this week?
Well, I have a little, I want to preface this real quick, Joe. You're the host. You got to the Google document first, so I had to kind of pick and choose my way around it. But I'm still
can agree with me. It's not the worst thing in the world.
No, that's fine. Yeah. I like to be challenged, and that's what you did. I had to, react on the fly here. So you said a lot of the New York Giants, which are absolutely in play. So I kind of backdoored this one here. I'm going with Kyle Rudolph, the New York Jets tight end here. Rudolph is $4,500 on FanDuel, only $3,000 on DraftKings, and again, they're playing Atlanta. Atlanta's 26 overall against tight end. So if we're going to stack Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, Kenny Galladay, let's just make it a four-headed monster party here, however you want to put it, and give me Kyle Rudolph at those prices. I've always love to punt tight ends in seasonal formats and in DFS circles. And with his price so low on both sites, we're not even really expecting much. Give me Kyle Rudolph for 3 or 4 receptions. He puts up 30, 40 yards. Boom, he's hit his value. And if he scores a touchdown, that's icing on the cake. So to me, Joe, it's Kyle Rudolph, New York Giants tight end.
Any concerns if Ingram is healthy enough to play in this game? Does that change your mind on Rudolph just for our listeners?
No, absolutely not. Evan Ingram has he's like a hangnail on your toe. It's always bugging you. You want to leave it there because I don't know if it heals, it heals. But if it's hanging there, you stub it. I mean, Evan Ingram is just an absolute headache to own.
All right, so stack of the week is coming up here in a second. Let's get to the defensive plays first. For me, I'm looking at Arizona against that weak Jacksonville offensive line. Plus, they're not only can they get sacks potentially in this, but that all line, but also some turnovers potentially too, as Lawrence is still kind of figuring things out. I think Vegas is an interesting one too. At home, that Vegas defense has played better once again than people who you want to give them credit for. And I think Denver certainly in play against the Jets after a very tough week for Zach Wilson. It would not shock me if the Jets play better this week, and we're all like, oh, look, the Jets are playing better. They're not nearly as embarrassing as they were last week. But at the same time, I think you still got to give the Denver defense some love. How about for you? Who's some of the DST plays you got your eye on?
I absolutely love the Cleveland Browns on Sunday. They host the Chicago Bears. And look, I know I kind of talked bad about Urban Meyer earlier, but Matt Nagy in Chicago, their head coach, he's unbelievably, but he's been awful, Joe. Let's just call it what it is.
Yeah.
He's constantly working in Andy Dalton and Justin Fields. I think he even still said when Andy Dalton is healthy, he's our quarterback one. That's not good for a young kid's progress and the reps of Justin Fields. So it's always nice to get in Justin Fields inside the red zone in a trick play and let this kid do his thing for 2-3 plays. But when he is up behind center for the whole 100% of the snaps here, it's going to look like a different story. And right now, Cleveland is giving Chicago 7 points, so Chicago is the underdog here. And I think Justin Fields makes a few mistakes, throws an interception or two, maybe a pick six. I mean, I want to see the kid do good, but I don't. It's a rival in the NFC North here for my Detroit Lions. But people look at DSTs in a different way. They think, well, I don't want to start this DST because the opposing team might hang a couple points here. To me, that doesn't even matter. It's about turnovers. It's about sacks, tackles for losses. And I'm just banking on the fact that the rookie, Justin Fields, is going to make a few mistakes and the Cleveland Browns will capitalize here. Cleveland is their only, looks to be $4,200 on FanDuel.
Yeah, well, New England was my favorite one last week, and talked about on the show. It's the turnovers. You got to look for those defenses that you know are going to create turnovers. That's because the turnovers sometimes turn into sixes, in the same moment. So that's something that's huge. All right, stack of the week. Spoiler alert for me, it's the Giants. And you know what? It's the game stack of the week too. I do really like Arizona too. I made that very clear. And for you, when you're looking at stacking this week, who are you going to go with?
I love the Denver Broncos here. The New York Jets come to town, and you know what? When the Broncos play, there's something special that goes on in that stadium. It's, well above sea level. People, they carry oxygen tanks and they go wild there. But the Denver Broncos host the New York Jets. And again, Zach Wilson just picking on another rookie quarterback who I like. I believe he's going to be good long term. But right now, he's making some mistakes. I think the Denver Broncos can capitalize on that. I think Von Miller just terrorizes this young kid, unfortunately. Couple sacks here. And I don't know if you saw, there was a short, 10, 15 second, photo, still photo of the Jets last week where it was, you could have drove a truck right through the offensive line and just smushed Zach Wilson. They had two tight ends way off on the left staring at each other. I mean, I don't know what the New York Jets are doing, but I firmly believe that the Denver Broncos just go nuts in here. And I wouldn't be shocked if they are the number one overall DST, for DFS formats at the end of the week.
Here's a question for you. How would you approach that Denver stack? Would you approach it with Bridgewater, Javonte Williams, and Sutton? Would you do Gordon instead? Would you mix match? Would you put Patrick in one? Because it is kind of a little all over the place, or there's lots of different combinations. Which would be your approach to Denver in a perfect world?
In a perfect world, it would be Teddy Two Gloves Bridgewater, very under the radar in terms of pricing. And then of the running backs, I believe that Javonte Williams, this is the week where he kind of, surpasses Melvin Gordon in that running back room. I believe they had the same amount of carries last week, but Javonte he was more effective and more efficient with what they were doing. And by the way, the Jets are 28th overall against opposing running backs. In terms of the wide receivers, Cortland Sutton, he's a lock to me. And of Tim Patrick and KJ Hamler, I would prefer Tim Patrick here. Again, he looks to be on the field 67 to 69% of the time here. So I would go Teddy Bridgewater, Javonte Williams, Sutton, and Patrick. Then I would enter another contest, and I would remove Sutton, and I would add Tim Patrick and KJ Hamler. Whenever I have a tough, it's between two players stack, something like that, I just remake the same exact line. I just swap in and out the player that I was, thinking about.
And that's why I have you here in the show, because I think that's the kind of theory that is lacking in a lot of DFS shows. We sit and really talk about the approach, and that's something that I want to bring here to Fantasy Pros, because it's something that I've always tried to talk more about on all the shows that I've been hosting for many, many years when it comes to DFS. The lock of the week, spoiler alert, Daniel Jones. I'm going to die on this hill. I'm just going to die on it. Sorry. And the other lock of the week clearly is Kyler Murray. And I know he's expensive, guys, but sometimes it's just right. I don't. Kyler Murray, you're right, man. He seems like he's playing in a different universe. And I think for you want to stay in that same vein here with Arizona for your lock.
Absolutely, and that's running back Chase Edmonds. Again, I have him for double-digit carries, about 12 or 13, about 65, 70 yards on the ground. He'll find the end zone. He's going to average about 5 yards a carry in this one. Fingers crossed. You can't see it, but I'm crossing my fingers. And the cherry on top is maybe we're looking at 4 or 5 receptions for another 40 yards. I think he's a lock for 2 touchdowns this week. One on the ground, one in the air. So the stack just works. It just fits right in with what you want to do with Kyler Murray.
All right, it's time for the lightning round, the fantasy fly around. I'm going to ask a quick question from every game here to Chris and get his opinion on it. Let's start with Arizona and Jacksonville. We talked all about Arizona. Let's talk about Jacksonville for a second. With Shenault not 100%, is there any love here for Marvin Jones or Shark? Because they're going to have to throw the football because goodness knows they don't really run it. Maybe James Robinson gets some play. That's a tough sell for me. But is there anything on the other side of this Jacksonville game that you find interesting or worthy of attention?
Yeah, it's Marvin Jones Jr. You brought it up. He's steady Eddie no matter where he goes. He was in Detroit, fully fulfilled his contract very well. And now he's in Jacksonville, and everybody's talking about Lawrence and Vishka and DJ Shark. Oh, guess who scored a touchdown last week in place of all these guys? It was Marvin Jones Jr.
All right, we talked at length, too, about the Giants. Let's talk a little bit more about the Falcons. We did touch on the main pieces there, but let's talk about Cordero Patterson. He's getting a lot of play. 4,600 on DK, 5,900. Any flex appeal for him this week in any lineups, or are you still not quite sold on his role?
No, I'm absolutely fading Cordell Patterson. I know a lot of folks spend a ton of fab on him in their seasonal formats, and you're going to get buried if you use Cordell Patterson in Week 3 in DFS formats. He's a trap. I want nothing to do with him. The Giants are 18th overall against opposing wide receivers. They're 23rd against opposing running backs. So any way you slice it, Cordell Patterson is a no-go for me in Week 3.
What about Mike Davis then, to that same extent? Is this like a Mike Davis, nobody saw it coming, has 2 touchdowns kind of game?
Well, I mean, anything is possible, but looking back, through the spring and the summer at the Giants, they have a sneaky good defense. And again, as we said at the opening of the broadcast, a lot of these teams, they're kind of, figuring it out and they're gelling and they're clicking, on their own pace. And I think that the New York Giants established some sort of dominance on the defensive side of the ball in Week 3.
Baltimore at Detroit. Mark Andrews is 6K over on FanDuel, 5K over on DK. Do you think that we've given up too soon on Mark Andrews? Should he be on our radar this week against Detroit?
Absolutely. I don't think we've given up. I think most folks have, kind of, come to the conclusion Mark Andrews is touchdown dependent. There's nothing wrong with that if you know what the issue is. So Mark Andrews touchdown dependent or not, does it really matter if he's dependent on touchdowns when he scores touchdowns? So any way you slice it, I have Mark Andrews finding the end zone this week. So yeah, he's a full go for me.
All right, let's talk about Chicago and Cleveland with Justin Fields playing. Would you want to pair him with Allen Robinson and go up the board, or down the board with Darnell Mooney and take all that money and spread it to some more sure things?
I think, yeah, that's the move. Justin Fields and Mooney, and you can sprinkle the, money elsewhere. Allen Robinson is being completely suffocated and suppressed in this offense. Again, Coach Matt Nagy, I don't know what the heck he's doing, but look at what happened the first 2 weeks of the season. Yes, A-Rob scored a touchdown, but that was like the first 5 minutes of the game in Week 2. So Allen Robinson isn't running the routes that we expect Allen Robinson to run. So I think it has everything to do with their head coach, not so much the players. So I would prefer to stack Fields and Darnell Mooney and sprinkle the extra money elsewhere.
Cincinnati at Pittsburgh. This one scares the crap out of me. We have not mentioned this game yet, so take me through it, and tell me, is there something here that pops to you? Because I don't feel good about Pittsburgh. I know, they're probably going to play better and bounce back. They played well in that first game, but it was kind of a slugfest in Week 1. You've got a potential injury here for, Deontay Johnson. On the other side, too, T. Higgins is the one piece that I feel good about in this game that I actually have some exposure to at 6,200 on FanDuel. I think he's very well priced, and at 51 on DK, it's an incredible value. But outside of T. Higgins, I got a tough time with this one. Sell me or don't on this game and some pieces in it.
You got it. So this one here, the first thing that stood out to me when these lines opened, like Sunday night or Monday morning, was regardless of what it is, I'm taking the under in this one. I have probably like a 17-14 kind of final in this one. So I'm fading this game from a betting perspective and from a DFS perspective, but that would be boring of me to go, no, I'm not going to answer your question, Joe. Let's move on.
Well, no,
it's
but
Tyler Boyd.
I think that kind of answers it, though, in a way. Is like, Vegas feels the same way I do, which is like, this is underwhelming, and that's okay. But go ahead, talk about Tyler.
But if
Boyd.
I had to pick a guy, it'd be Tyler Boyd. He's $5,600 on FanDuel, $4,700 on DraftKings, and Pittsburgh is 25th overall against opposing wide receivers. Now, Tyler Boyd has been the forgotten man in Cincinnati for quite some time now. Then you add Jamar Chase. T. Higgins is their alpha. Who knows how that's going to shake out? I look at Tyler Boyd the exact same way everybody looks at Marvin Jones. These guys will get it done. These like reception kind of PPR monsters in a way, going to see 10, 12 targets. So give me Tyler Boyd. He's, again, another wide receiver, only $5,600, $4,700 on DraftKings. I think he can sustain some sort of value here at those prices in this game, which is they're just going to be killing each other. These two teams hate each other.
All right, let's talk about Indianapolis and Detroit real quick. Ryan Tannehill and the wide receivers. Last week, look, we know it was the Derrick Henry game. I imagine you're going to get the fair dose of Derrick Henry as we always do. If you had to pick one of the wide receivers this week, A.J. Brown's been a little quiet so far to start the year. Is this the A.J. Brown breakout game, or are we going back to Julio?
No, it's an AJ Brown game, and you read my mind here. So AJ Brown is $6,800 on FanDuel. Indianapolis is 29th overall against opposing wide receivers. And a fun fact: AJ Brown had such an awful week too that he tweeted, I believe Monday or Tuesday morning, that said I couldn't catch a cold if it was right here in my face. So he knows he didn't play as well as he would want to in week 2. So I think AJ Brown is back and better than ever this coming week.
Any concerns in the Los Angeles Chargers Kansas City game with the Tyreek Hill cornerback matchup this week? Because Hill was a little quiet last week, and this week draws one of the better corners in the league.
Yeah, so I was going to mention that. Thank you for bringing it up.
That's why I'm here,
we were able to
help us out. Let's go.
Like we were able to prep ahead of time here. So last week, Tyreek Hill was kind of taken out of the game, and I think the Chargers took notes here. Tyreek Hill is the most expensive wide receiver on the slate. $8,700 on FanDuel, $8,400 on DraftKings, and I think that the Chargers look at what happened last week and they scheme that way again and fully take Tyreek Hill out of the game. So to me, I'm fading Tyreek Hill. I've never been one to spend up big time on wide receivers in DFS circles, but this week is not the week for Tyreek Hill. The Chargers are second overall against opposing wide receivers, and again, I think he gets a bad cornerback matchup, and Derwin James is going to be floating around his spot.
That's where I was going next, which is Derwin James too. Being healthy, what a difference that makes. And you saw it last week against Dallas too. I mean, he was not healthy last year, and he's been on and off again healthy last 2 years. So seeing him healthy on the field makes a big difference. And he's one of the few guys who can actually not keep pace, but slow down Tyreek Hill, I guess is the best way to put it. Let's go to Miami and Las Vegas. Is there anything in Miami you can make a case for this week, or is it just a hard pass?
No, not a hard pass. I can make a case for anybody given the time to think about it.
I don't have to make a case for everybody.
Well, I had Myles Gaskins. I put pen to paper with Gaskins in my DFS article this week. Gaskins, go to Vegas. Vegas 28th overall against opposing running backs. Gaskin is $5,900 on FanDuel, $5,400 on DraftKings. Now, look, Tua is out of the game. He's already been, taken out. He's got some rib injuries. So look at what they can do there. They're going to have to look, kind of see what they can do and kind of react on the fly. And I think Myles Gaskins gets a little bit more in the reception end of things here in this one. So yeah, I like Gaskin.
New Orleans travels to New England. Last week they didn't have any of their offensive coaches basically, and it showed. But in this one too, outside of Damian Harris, who's a pretty good value at 62 and 56 on DK, that's the only piece I see right now that I want to pay for. Do you want to make a case this week for jumping back into the high-priced Alvin Kamara, who is at $8K on FanDuel and 82 on DK?
I do not. I'd rather talk about James White here real quick. And when it comes to Alvin Kamara, it's such a bummer. He did next to nothing last week. They didn't use him how we all expected him to do. And James White he's finally hitting his stride yet again in terms of the passing game. It's only $5,400 on FanDuel. So in this game, I like James White the most. I know a lot of folks are they might get away from Alvin Kamara. He's always one of the more expensive priced running backs, $8,000 on FanDuel here. So I could see a case for playing Alvin Kamara just based on some a little bit suppressive ownership percentage.
Is there any contrarian love? Because we're all hammering the Jets right now for Corey Davis.
Yeah, yes and no. Again, I could argue both sides of the coin, play devil's advocate, have a conversation with myself if need be. But if Jamison Crowder is back in there, he's going to command some, certain amount of targets here. And Corey Davis broke out later in his career. He looked fantastic in the preseason. The first week of the regular season looked good. And so you fast forward to now in week 3, I think there is a little bit of love we can show Corey Davis. Corey Davis is $5,900 on FanDuel. Denver's 14th overall against wide receivers, but I think this one is Denver from start to finish. So fading all New York Jets.
All right, Seattle at Minnesota. It's been a very loud opening of the season for Tyler Lockett. Is this the loud DK Metcalf game?
Well, you would think so. I don't know if you gamble much, but like you go to the casino and you play roulette, right? If you walk up to the table and you see red has come up 17 times, what's your reaction?
That's why I asked, because that's exactly how I feel. You just laid the perfect metaphor out, my friend.
Yeah, I'm going to put all my money on black hitting on the roulette table. To me, yeah, it's got to be a DK Metcalf. We thought it was going to be last week, and Tyler Lockett was not himself when he put up 2 monster games in a row. So again, I'm going to bet on the fact that DK Metcalf at only $7,200 on FanDuel makes a case here to be the number 1 overall wide receiver in week 3 against Minnesota, who is 31st against opposing wide receivers.
With AB being questionable for the game, any love or investments you'd like to make in Mike Evans this week or Chris Godwin against the Rams?
Yeah, absolutely. I know this is kind of the easy way out, but I would stack both of these guys. Godwin is $7,300 on FanDuel, and Evans is $7,100 on FanDuel. Rams are 11th overall against opposing wide receivers. I just see this game being, little to no defense here. Aaron Donald gets his hands on TB12 a couple of times, but I like both of them. If I had to choose, I'm going Godwin. Him and Brady look to have some sort of, chemistry.
All right, last but not least here, Washington at Buffalo. There's one more running back we really got to talk about who's underpriced in terms of talent. It's Antonio Gibson, $5,900 for him over on DraftKings, $6,100 on FanDuel. Is there anything because he's not that far off from Saquon Barkley, if you want to kind of limit the exposure just a little bit, taking Barkley out of some lines and putting Antonio Gibson in, or do you need to see it first?
Well, in this case, luckily it's DFS. We're not married to a team. We're not married to a line. So with Antonio Gibson, I'm going to wait and see. I'm going to fade Gibson this week. The Buffalo Bills are 3rd overall against opposing running backs. So to me, the pivot in this game for the Washington backfield would be J.D. McKissick, who's only $5,300 on FanDuel. I think he can catch a couple passes, maybe bump your lineup a little bit in DK because of those PPR points here. But to me, I'm going to fade Antonio Gibson until further notice.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think McKissick right now is a good play. I might have one lineup where you do Gibson just because we all know sometimes it looks like, oh, this can't be good. We're going to have to wait it out. And all of a sudden you go, he did that against Buffalo? Really? Yeah. That shouldn't have happened, but that's football, right? That's why I'm a little worried about the Jets this week too. Like, what if the Jets show up and we're way more competitive this week? Because that's just the nature of the beast. Same thing with Atlanta, too. Like, they could go in there and beat the Giants. We're all looking at ourselves like, what just happened here? But that's why we play the games. And, of course, that's why we have great guests on like Chris Robin. Again, follow him on the Twitter machine at Detroit Beastie. And check out his bottom of the barrel work over at Team Rise or Fall. Chris, what else you got going on you want to plug, my friend?
Not much. I just want to say thank you for having me. It was a pleasant surprise when you reached out. I've been wanting our paths to cross one way or another, and I'm glad we finally did. And I can only do so much on my own, but when we come together, we can do anything. So I just want to tell folks, help and support other people, not only in regular, real, everyday life, but in fantasy circles too. Say, hey, that article was fantastic. Leave a comment. Do something like that. That kindness goes a long way, Joe.
The power of positivity, Chris, is great. And I'm a big fan of it myself. And I'm a big fan of yours as well. That's why I asked you to come on here, because I said to myself, it's really crazy that our paths haven't crossed on a show yet. So let's do it. This year is all about making new friends on the DFS show. And you're the second new one I've made in 3 weeks. So I'm very happy to have you here. Next week, we're going to have Chris Meany on the show. So we have new friends and old friends. We keep going back and forth. And that's the beauty of this industry, too. And Chris, again, great stuff as always. And I want to remind everybody, too, on the way out, don't forget fantasypros.com/optimizer to get all of your lineups set and straight. And Fantasy Pros also is running that life subscription contest. That's right, fantasypros.com/life to get involved with that, where you have a chance to win a subscription for life to Fantasy Pros, and at the same time, play some DFS on Yahoo. Doesn't get much better than that. All right, that'll do it for us, but the story of the game goes on. For Chris Robin, I'm Joey P. We will see you next time, kids.
Thanks for listening to the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Fantasy Pros, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/fantasypros.